My name is Todd Poole. I am a President and Managing Principal of Forward Planning. We are a land use economics consulting practice providing economic and real estate analysis on behalf of public and private sector clients. And we also have a parks practice where we do the economics and revenue generation for parks, open space, trails, and the like. So this is a product that is very of great interest to us. Joining me on the phone is Susan Kroll-Berrigan, who will be assisting or has been assisting on this project, and actually she'll be assisting me tonight in discussing the best case studies that we've done, as well as the interviews, many interviews that were conducted for this process. All right, with that, I'm going to get us going here. All right, just as a quick overview, first phase effort is really what we've just completed, which is the market study. And this helps to provide the baseline or the foundation for all of the other partners on this team, because, understanding, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are market-wise is necessary before design starts to happen or we start to think about different programming options. So that is what has taken place as of right now. We're going to obviously be talking about that tonight. Our second phase effort is, really what's happening tonight and through the rest of this week. And we'll be doing a lot of listening this week to help us think through on the programmatic side what the possibilities are, again, based on what has already been identified as market possible or market receptive. We'll talk about that momentarily. The next phase of this is the business plan operating model. And this will occur subsequent to this week. We'll start working on that as we get to a preferred design program. We will think about what these revenue generating opportunities will be. And for those who aren't familiar with this, is parks and other public spaces for really the past 20, 25 years have been required, at least the stewards of these amenities have been required to, really support themselves or be self-sustaining, to come up with funding in addition to the dwindling public resources that are out there, such as, just grants or, tax revenues that otherwise would be provided to these organizations. And so this part of the assignment in identifying revenue opportunities is quite important. It's one thing to come up with the capital money to build or to design these parks, which can be quite substantial, no question about it. But really the hard work is maintaining a budget for the operation and maintenance on an annualized basis, and to help with the marketing of the programmatic activities that take place there. And that's really the challenge. So the revenue generating opportunities that we will be looking at are going to be extremely important to the success of the park long term. And then finally, we will be involved in looking at the prospective economic impacts that are created by the activities generated at this location. When people come, and particularly the impacts are associated with people that don't live really in the area and who come here to spend money on cultural events and attractions, entertainment, food, and the like. When those folks come in here, every dollar that they drop is considered an economic impact. Because otherwise, if those things didn't exist, they probably would not come here. So we want to, estimate based on what the program might be for this space, what that would generate in terms of economic impacts to the local area, particularly for local entrepreneurs and local businesses, which I think we can all agree at this moment in time is quite important. Quickly, this is a slide looking at our study areas and the geographies that we're using for comparison. On the left-hand picture or image is you see a circle, and the circle represents about a 1,000-foot radii from our site. The site is, if you look in the middle of that circle, you'll see where the Clinton market area is, and then a kind of a broader Clinton Square area, and then on the right image you have the city of Albany within a 20-minute primary market area. That's what the PMA stands for, and then the Albany MSA. The reason that we look at various geographies is in order to understand what's happening socioeconomically. We can't just look at one geography and make an interpretation of what's going on. We want to look at it relative to other geographies. Further, we know, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, that a good portion of the the revenue generating opportunities and patronage will occur as a result of people coming in from outside of the city of Albany. I mean, certainly the city of Albany, with both workers and residents, will be mainstay patrons of this space once it is fully designed and operational. But in terms of, kind of really generating the type of money or the, revenue that could offset costs, we think that's going to come from at least the 20-minute primary market area, and on an occasional basis from beyond that, depending on how the space is programmed and designed. I mentioned earlier we've performed best case practice analysis, and this is intended to inform us, the study team generally, for planning in particular, on other park spaces of similar character in other places through the region and certainly in the United States that can give us an understanding of what might be possible in a space like this. And Susan will, touch upon this in a little bit, but this is in the report. We looked at I think it's a total of 4 specific spaces that met the criteria of being somewhat similar in size and in certain urban character, and offering some really, innovative design and programming elements that we think are applicable to our space here. And we also created a matrix that arrayed the types of features and events, revenue generating opportunities, what the management operating models were. Were they purely public? Were they public-private? Were they nonprofit operated, or some combination thereof? These are all important and factors that we will be considering when ultimately we're developing, the management model and revenue generating ideas for this site. We also, as part of this process, it's necessary for us to understand that, this park is not going to operate in a vacuum. There are things that are going to continue to happen around it, including development, in this case, residential and commercial development. And so this is more detailed in the report and mapped out. But, for example, you've got 250 housing units in various states within a pipeline, being planned for, under construction, or about to be delivered. These housing units are quite, close, or certainly within walking distance of the site. That's a good thing. Think of each housing unit as a household, so it could be 1, 2, 3 people living there. These are folks that would come, patronize a space like this, spend money, support local entrepreneurs who might have a concession at the site. We're also aware of, just under 300,000 square feet of office space, Class A office tower type space, that is to be developed. I will say, obviously in the age of COVID and certainly post-COVID, things might change in terms of how many office workers such a space might house, but nonetheless, it is a significant type of commercial building that will have some influence on our space. We've also noted in our report the number of new indoor dining and entertainment venues that are popping up, or at least venues that may be doing renovations, as is the case with the Palace Theater, 2,800 seat and they're going through a $65 million upgrade. That's quite significant. And given, that the Palace Theater is immediately across the street, it, quite literally will cast a big shadow in the sense of its influence on what can happen in the space. And I'm thinking in terms of, potential partnerships with the Palace Theater, where maybe there's some programmatic synergies that take place at the park and tie into what they're doing at the theater. So more about that later. And then finally, the Skyway, kind of pedestrian walkway slash parkway, park type space is estimated to attract about 100,000 annual visitors. That is significant, and given where it will kind of land in the downtown area, which is effectively across the street from this space, it will most certainly have a great deal of influence, and we're obviously taking that into consideration. We're thinking about programming and revenue generating ideas. Here are the key development projects that are arrayed on the right-hand side on this map. Again, this is in the report, and we identify as best as possible where these residential and commercial projects are located in proximity to our park space, directly in the middle of the 1,000-foot radii circle. All right, study findings. These are very high level. I know, please understand we could not give you all the detail of the full report. It's quite extensive, but these are kind of the takeaways, if you will. CMC stands for the Clinton Market Collective, by the way, which is currently what we're referring to our site as. But this site should coordinate very closely with the nearby Tricentennial Park, as well as the Albany Skyway. The Tricentennial Park is only 2+ blocks away. Again, there could be some synergies with programming with it, and it's certainly close enough for people to go between the two spaces. And so we don't, one of the things that, we've been discussing with Capitalize Albany, and certainly with the rest of the planning team, is that we don't want to see a duplication of what already takes place in other public spaces. What we do want to see is, a complement to those public spaces. So this is why we say, should coordinate closely with what's happening in Tricentennial Park, such that, for example, you don't have on the same day two identical programs occurring, and basically they're cannibalizing each other. The Albany Skyway, as I mentioned, is going to have a great deal of influence, bringing as many visitors, upwards of 100,000 annually. That's something that our park space should be able to take full advantage of. Long-term demand, or what I would consider, sustainable demand, is going to be driven by daytime workers and Skyway visitors. That is not to say that local residents will also not be part of that demand mix. However, what tends to happen is, once the novelty of the park kind of wears off, you don't generally see as many local residents frequent the space as they might have when it first opened, and that's generally typical. They're still going to visit the space, but perhaps not in as great a frequency or in as large numbers. What you do see, however, are daytime workers who, especially when the weather is nice, coming out, perhaps grabbing a bite to eat, sitting in the park, or coming there for programmatic activities in the evening. And certainly the Skyway visitors will be a mainstay driving that, as well as people from outside the region who just drive in and might, happen over to the park because there's something special happening, or just it's an authentic place they want to see. Coastal heritage visitors represent potential project area users. Cultural and heritage tourism is one of the fastest growing segments, if not the fastest growing segment of tourism generally. And given that the city of Albany has so many great cultural and heritage tourism sites, our park space should be able to benefit from that. And obviously we want to consider, how it's designed to, complement or certainly magnify these types of sites. What we found, certainly from our third-party research as well as interviews that we conducted, is that there is a growing market for food and music activities, and we're certainly aware of those that do take place. Those are identified within our study. Nonetheless, there's always room for more, as you say, one-of-a-kind or authentic food and music activities. Depending on how the space is designed and laid out, we certainly feel that could, the space could accommodate, those types of events and activities. Outdoor spaces and businesses are going to benefit most. Now, here's the thing: is we can only peer out into the future so far, and things are still evolving, given the current state of the pandemic. However, we do feel that even over the next 3-4 years, that outdoor space venues and businesses that are geared to do outdoor business, whether it's dining or something that they can facilitate their service in a public space setting. These are the activities and businesses that will certainly benefit, and doing it in a space like this, I think it would make it all the more successful for them if it's designed properly. What we heard in some of the interviews is that this location in the downtown can certainly use a space like this because office workers have a certain number of limited choices where they go to eat or maybe go sit and at lunchtime or after work. So this space definitely, I think, will be well received. The other important thing about this, and we heard this up front, I think, when the team, bid on this project, is we want to see economic development opportunity for local residents. And we strongly believe, and it certainly came through loud and clear in our interviews, that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity for local residents, particularly women and minorities, to test out small-scale entrepreneurial opportunities at the site, and perhaps using this almost as an incubator type spot, if you will, where concessions are not permanent necessarily, but perhaps business people can rotate through on a 1 or 2 month basis and graduate to permanent space somewhere else in the local area, in the commercial district of downtown. So we think that has a great deal of opportunity, and it's exciting to think about. Susan, you want to just give a quick overview of some of the best case highlights?
Absolutely. So we ended up using 4 best case studies of spaces that seem to, in one way or another, speak to the CMC site. 2 of them were park-like spaces that located in previously underserved neighborhoods, and 2 were previously underutilized plazas adjacent to cultural venues in these urban areas. And what ended up happening in all cases is flexible, vibrant, interactive spaces that allowed for pop-up retail. And these spaces really, in one way or another, transformed these communities and these neighborhoods. Within the best case practice analysis, we found that that multi-level flexible design elements were very common and made the spaces even more flexible and available to different types of activities, to cultural celebrations, to impromptu, but also scheduled gatherings. And a couple of the case studies also featured specific spaces where public speaking was supported. And it seems that in both of those instances, those areas and those public, even if informal public speaking areas, have been used and have made the places even more vibrant. we found that the case studies, all of them included some sort of at least one iconic design element that contributed to the uniqueness of the spot, but also tied into the venues surrounding it. And in one instance, there were these orange sort of modernist chairs placed on a lawn. In another instance, there was a large fountain, central fountain with granite eyeball designed seats in the shape of eyeballs. Another point that we found in the case studies was that all of these spaces were created in a way that they could be a gathering space for a diverse community at different times and different times of the day, not just for for evening gatherings and functions, but where residents and workers and visitors could find, interest and a place to either lounge or enjoy a marketplace or performance. And then finally, the spaces that we studied always included some sort of partnership. Friends of the Park organizations were an important element, as well as partnerships with nearby cultural and institutional venues.
Thanks, Susan. As I mentioned, part of what we do here is not just, analytic in nature, but it's also doing the qualitative stuff in terms of reaching out and interviewing local stakeholders and community people that have an understanding of, what the opportunities, what the challenges are locally as it pertains to this kind of space. And Susan led this effort. And I don't know if Susan, you want to just give a very quick overview of some of the key findings here?
Absolutely. So we ended up conducting 10 stakeholder interviews with elected officials, civic leaders, and business owners. And really a lot of what we heard confirmed and echoed some of what we were finding in the market studies and the case studies that we performed. So basically our stakeholder interviews, we ended up synthesizing into some common threads and important points that were made. And you can see right before you, some of those include addressing physical challenges and misperceptions of downtown, promoting underutilized assets and transforming perceptions, creating a gateway to the city that's created for the community. Something that we heard that really struck us is that if the space is designed for the community and the community loves it, then visitors will love it. So instead of focusing on visitors and what will the visitors like, what will the downtown community like and what will work for them. The space should represent a balance between permanence and discovery. And by that, we mean that it should be a place that becomes a familiar and interesting landmark, but it's also something where people can go and gather and perhaps find something new there. The amenities in the CMC space should be supportive of local vendors. Vendors, it's very important that they have access to certain things, particularly power and water. And then there's some extra amenities that would be wonderful and perhaps transformative for some vendors. This space should be an inclusive business incubator for a diverse set of local entrepreneurs. engaging with familiar local vendors would be a real step to lowering barriers to entrepreneurship. And
let me just interject for a second.
sure.
This is to say in a different way, we don't want to see a Starbucks located at that spot. Nothing against Starbucks, but if this is going to be, as we mentioned in the previous slide, a place of discovery, and certainly the term that we like to use is authentic. What you don't want here is a regional or national brand kind of, taking up the space. This is, a location that is great for local folks who can bring the flavor of Albany, literally and figuratively, to this space. And with that, it is authentic, such that when somebody comes from outside the region, it's like, this is different. I have to go there to get that experience, as opposed to if you had a national chain, yes, you could go anywhere and see the same thing. So that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. The individuals we interviewed also just voiced the need for a place in the downtown where you can grab, people who work there and live there can grab a coffee or a sandwich on the go. And they also indicated that it should be a market for the whole community. And this means including and considering the residents who live there. That was, that was a point that was brought up a number of times, and the importance of that.
Right.
Echoing what Todd, did you want to say something, Todd?
Just, I think there was a very good point that was made through one of the interviewees, or by one of the interviewees, that basically said you design for the local population, and if they find it attractive and it's receptive to them, then you can almost be assured that it will be, attractive and inviting to those who come from outside the area. And I thought that was well stated.
Mm-hmm. And then this is echoing what you had said before, the coordination with nearby venues and events is essential. And also there was discussion of starting up programming that crosses over multiple sites. And I know this occurs sometimes with other holiday events in the city, but this is something that could even be considered for other times of the year. And finally, we're looking at, starting conversation and consideration of partnerships that can be made in relation to the space. And there were a lot of good ideas that were offered, and sort of leads to, further investigation.
Right. So I think that's it for the overview of the market study. Again, that was a very quick Reader's Digest version of what's in the report, but we wanted to give you the highlights. So Ian, would you like me to stop sharing and pass this back over?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay, so Todd just took us through the market analysis summary. Now we're going to jump into existing conditions and take you through some on-site photos, and then talk about some of the parameters that are both opportunities and constraints. But here we're looking back towards Quackenbush Square. And one of the things that we'll touch on in a second here is just the nature of this park. It's really from a current, a past era where there's a lot of berming and kind of created some disconnection between the sidewalk and the surrounding street and the site. So, you've got some nice mature trees and kind of meandering circulation to kind of stairways, but a lot of the space is generally underutilized. We don't see a ton of pedestrian activity here, but it's obviously, you know, it's got some nice elements for softening the surrounding urban context. And, you know, it's, you can see the condition of things. It's kind of at the end of its life from a materiality standpoint. It's well maintained, but there's, you know, again, some of the elements are sort of at the end of their life. One of the biggest considerations that we want to talk with you about tonight, so you can kind of wrap your head around it, because so many of our concepts are having to, all of our concepts are having to react to this, is the grade change between Broadway and North Pearl Street. Even the existing grade that runs along Clinton Avenue exceeds typical accessibility. And so the idea, of course, we want this space to be as inclusive and as accessible as possible, but that creates a challenge because we can't just use the existing sidewalk system to provide that accessibility. We've got to figure out a way to be able to access it from the top or the bottom internally. The other thing that we'd like to do is, as Todd and Susan really nicely pointed out, is more contemporary urban spaces offer flexibility. That flexibility has a lot to do with openness and connection, both visual and physical connection. And as you can see, we have all of these kind of artificial berming that was done to try to create some intimacy within these spaces, a sense of seclusion and kind of reprieve from the urban environment. But the reality is that the challenges with these spaces is just folks don't feel very comfortable in them because of those interrupted sight lines and disconnection from that urban environment. So one of our goals is to try to maximize this limited square footage we have with our concepts, to try to make the site and the space as flexible and open as possible. And, you know, with that comes some trade-offs, and we'll kind of get into those, but as we get into some of the survey. But obviously, to make it more flexible as a market space, we need to address this grade issue. And that once we manipulate grade, then we're forced to manipulate some of the positive attributes of the site, which are some of the existing trees. So we're going to have to come back to that, because we know that's very important to some of the participants who have chimed in on their surveys. And so we're going to have to be cognizant of that through the design process and make sure that we're finding opportunities to address that. The other big challenge that we have, and I'll go back for 1 second, is historically Clinton Avenue was located right through our site. So it had extended from Broadway to North Pearl from Quackenbush Square. And then as it sort of got to the North Pearl intersection, it connected back to the modern Clinton Avenue. This section of Clinton Avenue, right in the foreground between Broadway and North Pearl, was realigned with the construction of the on-ramp. So as is typical with historic city streets, there's a whole lot of underground utilities under our site. And to be very frank, that they present some unique challenges. We have some older historic ones. The green one that you see is an old arch brick sewer line that's still active. These are all of these utilities are major. And they all have different requirements as far as cover go. And so what's really important there is, so we had to understand how far underground they were so that we would know how far we could manipulate the grade. Essentially, how far could we cut to try to flatten segments of the site. And the reality is that that's very restricted. These telecom lines, which are major lines that you see at the top of the site in red, they're only a few feet underground. So essentially we cannot manipulate, we cannot cut there. The blue lines are water lines. And although they are at a fairly adequate, they're at a fairly deep depth, we must maintain 5 feet of cover over them. So that really reduces our ability to cut as well. The one area of the site where we have some opportunity is in this lower, this lower corner that you see, the southeastern corner, on the corner of Broadway and Clinton. So there we have some opportunity, and we think that's actually the spot that really needs it the most, to open that corner up and be a nice welcoming visual and physical connection into the site from that off-ramp and from the connection from downtown and Quackenbush Square. So over the coming days, when you see the preliminary concepts, please factor in how we're, as you evaluate the designs, understand that we're having to work around both the grading challenges and these utility challenges, but we believe that there's certainly opportunities to have some creative solutions here. So we're excited to share those with you in a few days. To kind of summarize, we're going to develop scenarios, you know, but there's some limitations by those utilities. So we can't just simply flatten everything. We're going to have to really be cognizant of how we handle that grade so that we're not having any negative impacts to those important utilities. And, you know, one of the things I touched on before is, although this is one of the major entrances into downtown, and there is a lot of activity in and around our site, for such an important hub where so much activity is happening, we think that the current configuration of the site is really leading to its underutilization. So we really want to improve that utilization and understanding of that it's such a critical gateway and hope to be a destination. And then as part of this extensive public outreach and discussion with the community stakeholders, you know, this site has been identified for that type of gateway space that also offers hopefully the potential as a flexible market space. So all of those things we're going to try to have the designs accomplish. I now want to kind of give you a quick overview of our preliminary survey results. Again, I think this number's actually gone up, but right now we have 132 survey respondents. It's probably getting upwards of toward 140. But what's really interesting is 30% of the respondents to the survey live in downtown, and another 40% live in Albany. So that's really important, that 70% of the folks that are participating in the survey live in downtown. 50% of our respondents work in downtown, and actually 50% of them have actually spent time in the park. So that familiarity is really nice to understand. And so these are the critical things that our respondents have let us know what they value. they do want the space to be flexible. They really want to make sure that it supports local artists and vendors, as well as support local businesses. And trees were really important. So again, we've got a balance to strike there as we try to work through those site constraints. The next, we asked 6 questions where we asked folks to rank some visual preference here. And I'm going to do a little double duty here because these imagery that we've selected is kind of rooted in a lot of the feedback that we've gotten from Todd and Susan, as well as talking with the folks at Capitalize Albany. And so those were representative of these questions on the survey. And they're also, you know, what we'd like your feedback on if you haven't had a chance to take the survey. Please do so if you haven't had to. But also, these are some of the inspirational imagery that we're trying to consider and incorporating into the design. So this first question was to rank site activities. So outdoor market, vendors and artists, casual dining, seating options, community events, and food and drink. So now I'll show you the results for those site activities. The outdoor market really scored high, which is obviously a good reflection of the previous design planning efforts that have gone. That's why this was targeted for that, and it's consistent. So that's good to see. Food and drink, also that's what kind of had the second highest rank, and then vendors and artists spaces came in third. So that's how they rank. These correspond with other survey responses as the most desired additions in downtown Albany. And all of these activities will be possible within all of our design concepts. So these are things that we're anticipating integrating in all of the concept. The next question related to the types of plaza elements that would be important for the space to include. And this is really an important question because we've got, again, going back to striking a balance, we want this space, of course, to be a viable market space. But again, it's gotta be a great people space. It's gotta be a functioning urban space that kind of works on the day-to-day and in the slow hours of the market. So it's gotta have that flexibility and be a great place to just be. So again, some of the elements that we're talking about here, shade trees, should there be grassy areas? Should there be diverse seating? Should there be water? Again, urban environments, you know, they feel hot and exposed. And so just having water play not only can be an artistic element, but it can also just give a sense of cooling and relief in hot summer, you know, busy months. Intimate gathering areas in a more urban design context, and then diverse programming, again, building off of that flexibility. So interestingly enough, shade trees scored super high. So that's something that, again, is going to be a challenge for us because to make the space more flexible, we've really got to figure out how to work with the grade. And so it would be important for our design team to make sure we're adding back in shade trees and shade elements to help soften that urban landscape. Diverse programming came in second, and then diverse seating was the third ranked. you know, and so we absolutely understand the community's desire for flexible space. We agree with that, and we will be planning for it. And then we absolutely agree trees in an urban space are very valuable and valued by the community. That message has been heard loud and clear. Lighting, we wanted to not really focus on stylistically here, but more about all the different types of lighting that there are that this space can accommodate. So, you know, we have streets on 3 sides of us that have to tie into the existing fabric, but at the same time, we think this is a very unique space and opportunity, and we want it to feel special. So whether it's pole lighting, tube lights, bollard lighting that's, you know, getting more down at a pedestrian scale, lighting that's used as an art installation. One of the components that I forgot to go over in kind of those earlier discussions was the real need for the opportunity for this site to have something vertical on it that can be seen from blocks and blocks away on the North Pearl axis that really connects directly to the site, and then also coming off the on-ramp. So, and lighting obviously extends that experience. So playful artistic light installations can really activate a space and extend that utilization period. Or dwell time, and that dwell time is directly can correspond to business activity, both directly and indirectly with spinoff. Landscape lights are nice, soft approaches to give the site a glow, but still make it feel safe. And then integrated lighting into site features. So interestingly, landscape lights were the #1 vote getter. Integrated lighting into the site features also scored very high. And then art installation lighting got the 3rd number of votes. And so we appreciate these responses that you want some unique and unusual lighting elements that you don't see every day. I think that's what that's telling us, and that really can contribute to that sense of place and uniqueness that this site needs, that Todd and Susan spoke about, of being authentic and genuine. Next one is the types of seating. You know, sculptural seating elements, opportunity for stadium seating, seat walls, small group kind of movable furniture, again, ties into that flexibility, opportunity for seating in smaller group sizes, and then, you know, standard or even unconventional bench seating. And the fact is that all of these things can be integrated into these designs, but we just wanted to get a sense for which ones you felt the strongest about. Seat wall seating scored the highest, and then some intimate seating came in 2nd, and small group sort of flexible seating scored 3rd. Again, we think that having a variety of seating options is really important to placemaking, so that there's something for everyone. We want to make sure it's comfortable for our seniors to sit. There's places for young families to be able to sit and supervise their children, as well as for young people to kind of hang out in a safe way. So having that flexibility and variety is going to be really important in these design concepts. All right, the next one is images of vendor options. Again, we're wanting to kind of explore all of these things, and particularly trying to see how best the site can accommodate these different options. So, you know, there's different types of pavilion structures that potentially could provide some both shade and cover over tented vendor areas that can also add elements of definition and vertical architectural components to the site. You know, shipping containers that have been retrofitted to become spaces or maker spaces. Typical tents that you'd see at farmers market or festivals, mobile units or food trucks. And then this next one, modular buildings, are sort of taking some of these container pieces, you know, again, with our utilities constraints, we're not going to be able to have any type of structures with deep footings or spread footings that we just simply can't get deep enough without interrupting those important. So thinking about these more temporary or movable options is really the direction that this is heading. And then, you know, other modifications of that are stalls or stands. And again, trying to promote as much flexibility that maybe our designs can include several of these. Stalls or stands were the #1 vote getter. Mobile units and food trucks came in second, and the pavilion structure came in third. Again, everything's kind of coming back to giving vendors and potential users of this market space as much flexibility as possible. So all of our designs need to make sure we're listening to those important needs that they have, and trying to see if the site can accommodate those. Art installations, again, lots of flexibility. We can do things on the ground. We can do things on vertical planes. We can integrate wind in that verticality. We can make things multi-sensory. We can have temporary pop-up art installations. I think Todd and Susan made a great point about that, that although we want this space to be iconic and familiar, parks that do really well have the ability to adapt and kind of regenerate themselves over time, and pop-up art installations can really give that rejuvenation. So, you know, again, flexible spaces can accommodate those flexible type maneuvers. And then wayfinding sculptures that really help brand the space and help connect it to its surrounding context. Temporary art installations scored the highest. Folks like the multi-sensory art, and they also like the wind sculptures. Okay, so we're gonna now kind of wrap it up and summarize the design influences and considerations. Again, we've talked a lot about it. We've got significant utilities and we've got significantly slopes on a relatively small site. Everything's kind of in the heart of downtown, and we're trying to, you know, really take advantage of the fact that this site is really going to be functioning as a hub and the potential for a destination as a gateway, and responding to some of the existing fantastic developments that are there, as well as a lot of the future elements of both from residential, commercial, as well as the Skyway that are really going to make this site even more critical to be a great people space. Again, want it to be a great new gateway into downtown, want it to be a flexible market space, an incubator for local artists, entrepreneurs, and cultural assets. We really want to increase connectivity. We want this space to be as inclusive and connected as possible. Now more than ever, that is a really important design consideration. And so I think you'll see that emphasized in all of our concepts. And in general, we just need to improve the pedestrian experience, both as a space, but also in folks as they're passing through or by on their way to other important assets in the downtown. Again, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. The next few days will be intensely responding to your feedback, as well as developing these preliminary concepts. And we really want to invite you back at 6 o'clock on Thursday, this coming Thursday, where we'll be presenting these preliminary ideas to you, and really important that we get your feedback, because that's going to be really the framework of the next phase of revisions and hopefully helping us get to a preferred option. So with that, I would like to open it. Sorry about that. I'd like to open it up for discussions, and then before we go, I'll switch it over to the slide that again gives you a link to the website and opportunity to take the survey. So let me open up the chat. Okay. All right, do we have any questions? I'm looking in the chat bar, and I know that Mary had her hand raised, and I don't know if anyone has been able to, if you do have a question or if that was just inadvertently. So if folks could type in their questions, we will answer them in the order that they're received. So if you can go to the chat bar, you can type in a question, and we'll order them. We'll do our best to answer them as they come in. Okay. So I have a question. The website says today's Zoom session started at 7, but it actually started at 6. Can you please make sure the times are correctly displayed in the future? Well, we were not aware of that mistake, and we will absolutely check the remaining schedule on the website and be sure to get that corrected and confirm that all of the other times are corrected. For those of you who are on the call now, we are confirming that on Thursday, the presentation will be at 6 o'clock. Okay, how did you conduct the initial surveys for the features and elements presented? We used and we're looking on the website now, and it looks like it does say 6, but maybe we'll double check that. Yeah, so how did we develop the initial surveys for the features and elements presented? We used a survey program called Survey Legend. It's a really great program that allowed us to ask a series of questions, and then depending on the type of user you were, it could kick you to a different set of questions. So for example, if you were a local business person, a local artist, even both. So it was a pretty smart survey that we believe gave us some very good, some good feedback. The actual features and elements presented, we think were, again, an effort to not reinvent the wheel. So much planning work has been done for this entire area. And so we really were just studying the previous studies done and identifying the space as you know, the primary objective of being a viable market space, and that's why the market analysis and business plan and operating model are going to be such a critical component to the project, to make sure that that is vetted and that our designs, that whatever the physical designs are, can support that market analysis. So again, the features, we believe, are pretty representative of some of the preliminary visioning that has already been done in previous studies. I hope that answered your question. Any additional questions? Okay. If you do have, a lot of times with these things, we know that was a lot of information to take in, so it's totally understandable that you might think of something right after we sign off. By all means, feel free to reach out to us either directly or through Capitalize Albany to give us any additional feedback that you might have or any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to be as responsive as possible and get back to you. Again, I'll share my screen real quick so I can, this one, yeah. There we go. So again, hopefully encourage you, if you haven't already, to take the survey. That information is going to be ongoing, and as the process continues, we'll be updating or providing new surveys, which give you the ability to chime in that way as well as the concepts are developed in the future. You can go to www.clintonmarketalbany.com. We'll give you project updates, and as well as, again, you can provide the any additional feedback or questions that you might have if you go to clintonmarketinfo@gmail.com. We'll be able to receive those messages, and we'll do our best to get back to you in a really timely fashion. Again, we thank you for your time. Sorry for the technical glitch. That was completely my fault, not Todd's fault. So I apologize to Todd and everyone and thank you everyone for your patience as we work through that. We'll hopefully have all of those kinks worked out by Thursday night. And with that, just thanks again for your time, and we really appreciate it, and hope that you'll join us again on Thursday. Thank you all, and we'll talk to you real soon.